June 23rd, 2001. Artis and Bernita White took their 5-year-old daughter, Michaela, to a birthday party at Potter Park in Lansing, Michigan. The afternoon went well, with Michaela being excited, but the party was in a pavilion outside the zoo. Michaela eventually wanted to enter the zoo and see the animals, so Bernita took her daughter inside. Artis decided to leave and pick up the couple's other daughter, 7-year-old Alana, from a different park in the city. They wanted Alana to see the animals too. As Bernita and Michaela walked from the picnic area to the zoo entrance, a gunshot rang out through the park. The bullet passed through Bernita's left arm and struck her heart, then exited her body on the right. She died almost instantly, with her daughter right next to her. The police evacuated the park in fear of an active shooter, but no shots were fired after the initial round. Whoever had killed Bernita had been targeting her specifically, and they had effectively become a ghost. Law enforcement wanted to examine the bullet that had killed Bernita, but that bullet was missing. Whoever was responsible had entered the park and removed the bullet. This individual was clearly very experienced. Based on the entry and exit points of the bullet, the police determined that it had been fired from a high-powered rifle roughly 100 yards away from Bernita. This piece of information actually turned suspicion onto Artis White. Artis was a detective sergeant with the Michigan State Police, and he had a lot of experience with firearms. He had exited the park shortly before the shooting and knew exactly where Bernita would be walking. As it turns out, Artis had a possible motive for killing his wife. At the time, he and Bernita had been in the process of getting a divorce. The couple had been attending marriage counseling for 2 years, but they eventually decided it was time for a change. Both of them had been seeing other people, and it's likely that they had only stayed together for as long as they did for the sake of their children. During the investigation, the detectives asked Artis if Bernita's boyfriend could be connected to the shooting, and Artis denied this possibility. Ironically, this narrowed down their list of suspects to Artis alone. There are some discrepancies about the details surrounding their divorce. Artis claimed that the media portrayed the divorce as aggressive and potentially abusive, but the truth was that the couple had simply decided to live separate lives. According to Artis, they had made this decision amicably and were still raising the kids together. They lived in the same house, attended church together, and made an effort to have normal conversations in front of their children in order to communicate that the divorce wasn't their fault. However, these details could not be confirmed or denied. According to a different source, Artis had hired a private investigator to follow Bernita during the divorce proceedings. It's unclear exactly why this was the case or what was discovered from that investigation. Law enforcement looked into numerous different theories regarding Bernita's murder, including a serial killer who liked using rifles to kill victims from long range, a random accident where someone fired a round into the air and it just so happened to strike Bernita, and a possible gang initiation. None of these theories held up under scrutiny, and Artis remained at the top of the suspect list. He was the only person with a motive, and he certainly seemed to have the capabilities necessary to pull it off. Unfortunately, Bernita's murder is still unsolved. Despite their belief that Artis was responsible, the police have not been able to find any substantial evidence linking him to the murder. On the same day that it happened, Bernita's 67-year-old mother died as a result of a heart attack. According to some sources, she suggested that Artis was likely responsible for the murder before she passed away. Artis himself had stated that this has never been confirmed. In this case, it seems as if the truth may remain shrouded in mystery forever. 19-year-old Jasky Kawakla, nicknamed Hope, was dropped off at a Kmart in Lawton, Oklahoma for a job orientation on April 7th of 2008. After her sister dropped her off, Hope mysteriously vanished. When a family member arrived at the Kmart later that day, Hope was nowhere to be seen. Her friends and family have attempted to help the Southwest Oklahoma chapter of missing and murdered Indigenous women ever since her disappearance, but very little information is known about the case. DNA samples and fingerprints have been submitted to law enforcement, but no updates have followed this. To this day, 16 years later, Hope's whereabouts and well-being remain unknown. Her case gutted the local community, who by all accounts loved the young woman. She had no known enemies, and the police have never named any suspects. Hope is just one of over 300 missing and/or murdered Indigenous victims in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, law enforcement tends to put less effort and fewer resources into solving cases with Indigenous victims, so it's especially important to keep their memories alive. Hopefully, Hope's kidnappers will be brought to justice at some point, but until they do, their atrocities remain in the shadows. Margaret Hinkle was a 32-year-old mother of 6 who worked as a Girl Scout leader in Gary, Indiana. On March 4th of 1974, Peggy had a meeting with the other Girl Scout leaders at the local library. Her husband, Raleigh, was taking care of the children for the night. By 10:30 p.m., Peggy's family were all settled in. However, Raleigh awoke at 2 a.m. to find that his wife had never returned from her meeting. He left the house to search for Peggy himself. He went to the library, Peggy's friends and family, and even the local gas stations, but she was nowhere to be found. Raleigh returned home and waited anxiously for news of his wife's whereabouts. What he didn't know was that mere hours earlier, 2 motorists had come across Peggy's lifeless corpse at the corner of 25th and Wright, a short distance from the Hinkle family home. Peggy's body was face down and only 9 feet away from the Hinkle's van. The police knocked on Raleigh's door and told him the news. He confirmed that the body belonged to his wife. Peggy's body was confiscated by law enforcement and they performed an autopsy. This revealed that Peggy had been sexually assaulted and shot twice in the back of the head with a .38. 1 bullet was recovered from her skull. Due to powder burns on her head and neck, the police determined that the firearm used to end Peggy's life had been fired from a distance of less than 3 feet. There was also extensive bruising on her upper body and hands, which suggested there was a struggle. Peggy had fought until the bitter end. During a search of the van, the police found the keys still in the ignition, although Peggy's wallet was missing. A set of fingerprints was recovered from inside the van, and a second bullet was found in the pavement beneath where Peggy's body had been. The investigators began to piece together a timeline of events. The Girl Scout meeting had ended at 10 p.m., and Peggy had bought a snack from a hot dog stand between 10:30 and 11. After this, her movements were unknown, although a resident of the neighborhood near the scene of the murder reported having heard gunshots at 1 a.m. Several days would go by before Peggy's wallet mysteriously turned up in downtown Gary. A passerby picked it up and it still contained her identification and money. The only thing that was missing from the wallet was a set of family photos. The police identified several suspects, but each of them was ruled out after their fingerprints were compared to those found at the scene. Raleigh himself was also questioned, although law enforcement quickly ruled him out as a suspect. A $2,300 reward was offered for information regarding Peggy's case, but this did not generate any useful leads. To this day, Peggy's case remains unsolved. With any luck, a new piece of evidence will be uncovered at some point in the future, but until this happens, her killer will remain unidentified. On June 20th of 2021, 32-year-old Justin Seaweck arrived at the Days Inn on Elizabeth Avenue in Kansas City, Kansas, expecting to receive what some sources have described as, quote-unquote, adult companionship. However, this would be the last time Justin was ever seen. his family began searching for any signs of him, and they found his car abandoned at the Days Inn with the driver's side window broken and all his belongings missing. This discovery led the police to believe that whoever had lured Justin to the Days Inn had been planning a robbery, but for some reason, they had kidnapped their victim as well. During the investigation, law enforcement reviewed security camera footage from a nearby business. In the footage, Justin was walking to a gas station across the street when a vehicle pulled up beside him. Several men got out of the vehicle and forced Justin to get inside, after which it immediately sped off. A few days later, an ad for Justin's phone popped up on Facebook Marketplace. The police set up a sting operation to catch the kidnapper, but they ended up canceling the operation at the last second. According to them, their reason for canceling the operation was to keep everyone involved safe. After this strange blunder by law enforcement, it seemed as if Justin's case would never be solved. It was unknown if he was still alive or if his life had been taken after the kidnapping. 2 years would go by before another update occurred. On April 16th of 2023, a hiker was walking through a wooded area of Wyandotte County, Kansas, when they stumbled upon a set of human remains. The police confiscated the remains and received DNA samples from Justin's family, which they compared with the body. It was a perfect match. Even though Justin's remains have been found, his killers still remain unknown. Hopefully this will change soon, but until it does, there are people out there somewhere living with the memory of taking Justin's life.